This is Lesson 1.3.1, the New Technology Regulatory Environment. In this lesson, we'll discuss some of the general aspects of the regulation of new technology and why health technology assessment is important. In healthcare, there are multiple ways in which technology is regulated or influenced by regulation. Two important questions relevant to understanding and using health technology assessments are: how are the new medical technologies approved, and how are the new medical technologies reimbursed or paid for? Understanding the answers to these two questions helps answer the other two questions: why are we creating evidence through medical technology evaluation or medical technology assessment, and what evidence needs to be created? Some important considerations when developing a new product are the patent exclusivity window, which is the period of time where more than half of the research and development is conducted, leaving only half of the patent time for sale when your product is protected from competing products. Both national and international regulatory agencies that demand separate molecular, animal, human, economic, and safety analyses, which means an analysis in the U.S. may not be the same as an analysis in the UK or Australia or China or Russia. In some cases, it may be possible to use the same results, but in other cases, every country may have its own requirements for any type of technology assessment being performed. Additionally, once a product is approved, there's constant oversight for safety and a high degree of surveillance, meaning once the product's on the market, the market for health technology assessment on that product is not ended. Finally, revenue generation is dependent upon payment approval from national governments. So just because a product is approved for marketing or sale does not mean that it will be reimbursed or paid for once it's on the market. And if it's not being paid for, that means it's not making any money and it's essentially not being sold, even though it's approved. Technology assessment broadly is the gathering and analyzing of information on the performance of a technology. We need to understand the process and the details in order to design an appropriate assessment. So it's important to understand who the audience is and why the assessment's being done in order to design the correct type of assessment. Once a stage in the development or regulatory process has been completed, the chance to gather important information may be lost. That means it's important to understand the whole process of development, approval, and reimbursement when designing the technology assessment, because once a product is through the approval stage or has attained reimbursement policy, it might not be possible to go back and collect information from before that point in time, but information from earlier may be necessary for future technology assessments. The role of government is the most important difference between marketing non-medical technologies and medical technologies. Although there's government regulation in many industries, there's substantial government regulation that differs country to country and state to state within the U.S. for healthcare. Government agencies have influence both on the approval and coverage or payment of a technology. The second important difference is that end users of a technology generally do not pay for it, or at least not all of it. So, health insurance or government payers usually reimburse most of a product's cost or price. However, it's the patients that actually receive the product, and it's usually hospitals or physicians or other health professionals that use the product. So, a hospital may buy the device, which is then implanted in a patient, but it's the patient's insurers that reimburse the hospital their overall cost. And the device is regulated by a different government agency. So you can see, even in this very simple example, there's multiple stakeholders with a variety of interests. And that simple example itself gets complicated in terms of which way money's flowing and which way the product's flowing. And when trying to conduct or design a technology assessment, it's important to understand the directions and reasons for these arrows. So you may wonder now, well, how does a new technology make it to market? First, and importantly, a new technology obtains a patent. This grants an exclusive right to sell the product for 20 years. During that time, no other manufacturers of the same product can release that same product on the market. However, in developing a new drug or new technology, as I mentioned before, much of this 20 years is taken up during the research and development period. At some point during the research and development period, regulatory approval from the FDA, or Food and Drug Administration, is obtained to market the technology or sell the technology in the U.S. To do so, companies need to demonstrate it is both safe and effective, and this is a long, multi-stage, expensive process requiring numerous clinical trials in multiple phases. Once it's been approved for sale or marketing, it's the payers or insurers that must agree to cover the technology. And standards differ by payer to payer. So even if one payer or insurer agrees to cover it, others may not. This limits then the market that's available to sell the product in. Medicare, which is a government payer, requires that a technology is reasonable and necessary. Other payers or insurers will have their own standards by which to judge coverage determinations. Finally, after all of these regulatory and reimbursement issues are covered, it's still necessary to ensure that providers use or prescribe the new innovation. Because even if it's approved for sale and someone will pay for it, it only matters if it's actually used and sold, in which case then it can be paid for.